So, just before we start, as a quick preface, after I saw the first shadow, I totally thought I would be able to just sit down and record a video on it. What I didn't realize was that, like, as soon as I sat down to somewhat organize my thoughts, and even immediately after we saw the play and we just went to go have dinner somewhere, I was on my phone writing paragraphs and paragraphs of just unfiltered word vomit because I had so many thoughts about this play. So I'm very sorry for before this came out being oh, well, video coming soon, video coming soon. I did not know how crazy this play was going to be and how much would be revealed by this play. Honestly, it's kind of crazy. Welcome back to Cloudy Cleric. My name is Oliver. Hi, hello, and today we are going to be talking about The First Shadow, the play, The First Shadow, the Stranger Things play. Specifically the one on Broadway. It originally opened in London, at the Phoenix Theater, but I saw it in Broadway. And we'll get into it later in the video why I feel a need to clarify that, kind of. I have no idea how long this video is going to be. As of recording, I didn't even finish the script because one of the sections I was I'm just gonna wing it on camera, so I don't even know how long my script is. Last I checked, let's see, it's around 7,000 words, and I wish I had kept the script to my Mike will get Vecnut and This Is Why video so I could have a little bit of a reference for how long this video might be, but that script is long gone, so I have no idea the word to runtime ratio. One last thing, I have decided that I'm going to come out with new videos when I finish them, in the words of D'Angelo Wallace. It took me so long to make this video, and I realized kind of while doing this that I really enjoy writing videos, more so than I enjoy sitting down and filming them and editing them, which is why I'm going to college for screenwriting and not editing or anything like that. I wish that I was able to make long form videos, but to be honest, let's be real, I'm going to upload whatever I want. Okay, so I'm gonna break this up into 3 parts. Part 1 will have no spoilers in it, so I'm just gonna talk about the play and avoid spoilers and give advice to people who are going to go see the play in New York especially. Part 2 and Part 3 will have spoilers. Part 2 will just kind of be more information about the story of the play, and Part 3 is going to be more analysis. Let's get into it because I don't want to spend 1 million years editing this like I did writing this. Part 1, thoughts and experience, no spoilers, and there will be no spoilers because I don't want people to get spoiled for this play. For reference, I went in with absolutely no idea as to what I was going to see. I mean, I knew it was about Henry and Henry's backstory when he arrives in Hawkins, and then the high school experience of the Stranger Things adults in the show and stuff. But other than that, I had no clue what the fuck this play was going to be. And honestly, I'm really glad that I kept myself spoiler free. So for this section, I'm gonna try to stay as spoiler free as possible in case any of you out there are gonna go see the play. I want you to have the same experience that I had because my experience was absolutely mind-blowing. For advice for people seeing the show in New York, aka how to get tickets and such. Actually, disregard the New York part. For both London and New York, I want to say that you should probably get tickets for the balcony or the back of the stage floor seats because there are a ton of effects used in this show, and I don't want you to miss out on any of them. I would have been pissed the fuck off if I was sitting in the front row for this play because you just want to be able to see the whole stage. There are even some parts where you want to be able to see what's happening in the crowd as well. Just make sure that you have seats where you can see the whole stage, and that you don't really have an obstructed view of like any part of it. So in terms of buying tickets, and this goes for New York specifically, you can buy tickets in advance. What I would recommend is like going to like TKTS or just in person to the box office day of, and getting those seats for cheaper. Getting tickets day of will always generally be cheaper, and going to New York to see a play on Broadway just like within itself is like expensive enough. Getting advance tickets is good if you're like really worried about getting the seats that you want. My mom went day of to the box office, and of course they had the cheaper rush tickets that were kind of on the side, but my mom asked the person at the box office if we could get kind of more like middle seats in the balcony. He gave them to us, and he even gave us like a discount without us asking for it. Yeah, just go to the box office, talk to a human, don't just buy them through like the internet, because you will be able to save, there's like a possibility that you'll be able to save money. Of course you can do lottery tickets, that's really only if you don't care if you see it or not. So I wouldn't sit down and recommend like, oh, if you're gonna go see it in New York you should get lottery tickets, because no, you should if you really want to see this play you should not do that. In terms of the New York play, just a couple of things before you go and see it at the Marquee Theater specifically. Make sure you get there early. That goes for every single Broadway show. If you get there late, it's up to the discretion of the ushers whether or not they'll let you in after the play has already started, so you might have to wait until Act 2 until you're able to get to your seats. And make sure that you use the restroom before too, because in case you don't know, the theater is part of a hotel, and the section reserved for the theater and the bathrooms are like outside of that section, so you do need your ticket to re-enter after going to the bathroom. So I would just use the restroom first to get it out of the way. Something about the Marquee Theater is that there is very, very little leg room, like literally like almost none at all. It's not very good. The First Shadow is not the only play I've seen at this theater. I also saw Tootsie at this theater like a million years ago. Back then it had no legroom, and still now it has no legroom. So if you need accommodations for that kind of thing, or you're worried about having very little legroom, I'd try to get accommodations maybe. Like my mom had surgery on her knee and had to get her knee replaced, so when she has to sit down for like extended periods of time, like sometimes her knee can start hurting. So she just sat next to me, and I sat on the side of her bad knee, so she was able to like stretch out her leg. If you think this is going to be an issue, just I would try to see if you can get any sort of accommodations for that. In terms of concessions, there isn't a whole ton of like non-alcoholic concessions. And another thing is that sometimes if you go to a show and you order a drink, they'll give you like a cup that is like somewhat branded for either like the play, but the cup that they give you at the theater is not really branded for the First Shadow, it's branded for the theater. I mean, the cup had like a list of plays that had been at that theater like recently. I didn't keep the cup because I didn't think it was worth keeping, and the First Shadow was listed on that like list, but it's not like a First Shadow cup that you'd want to keep or anything. Next is the general premise of the play. So this play in specific is, as you may have heard, a deep dive into Henry Creel. The play starts when he moves to Hawkins, and it ends when he is taken into full custody by Brenner, which should not be spoilers for anyone, because we all know that happens to Henry if you've watched the show. It also talks about more of the backstory of the adults, like specifically Joyce, Hopper, and Bob Newby are people that you would recognize from the show that it talks about, along with Bob Newby's sister Patty, who is not in the show but is a main character in this play. What I will say is that especially with this play, I think basically since the end of season 3, I feel like Stranger Things has tried to transition itself from being more like PG-13 to more like R or like mature, and I think this play is definitely a representation of that. I think the website says either 12 or 14 is recommended for this play. I wouldn't take my child to it if they were under 14, but the amount of children I saw at this play was like absolutely staggering. It just reminds me, like, I know we make fun of like the general audience, or like Bylers make fun of the general audience a bunch, but like we have to realize that, like, unfortunately in the climate that we live in, a lot of the general audience is children. What I'm saying is that just in general, this play is more adult. We all know that Stranger Things 5 and the overall rating of Stranger Things on Netflix has been changed to like mature audiences or something, so keep that in mind. Between the ages of 12 and 14, you think that you can handle a lot. I know I would have cried at this play. The plot of this play does relate to Stranger Things and Stranger Things 5 in general. The Duffer Brothers helped write this play, but you don't really have to have seen the show to understand it. My father hasn't seen past season 2, and he saw the play with us, and he pretty much understood the whole thing. He really enjoyed it too. So even if you haven't seen the show necessarily, or you aren't like a super fan, you will still be able to enjoy this. Here are some of the trigger warnings for this show that are listed on the site. Trigger warnings include gunfire, loud noises, explosions, there's haze and smoke, strobe lights, strong language, extreme depictions of various mental health conditions and disorders. If you are under 16, the website says that you must be accompanied by an adult, and children under 5 will not be admitted to the theater, which is kind of like, duh. Whatever. My add-ons for trigger warnings is there's abuse in like a general sense. That is a big overarching thing, especially animal abuse, medical, and there's a lot of references to child abuse. Lots of blood and gore. At one point there's implied pedophilia, but it's very mild, it's very implied. There's a lot of jokes about incest. I mean, I think it's funny, it's humorous, it's not meant to be taken seriously, but like, that was, I don't know if I should put that as a trigger warning or not. I don't know where to put that, but I mean, Lonnie Byers is in the play, and he's a pretty big trigger warning. I don't like him. My thoughts after seeing this play, just like what I think, not getting into spoilers, some of the strong suits, is that the acting in this play is like very extremely good. It was just fucking amazing, is all I can say. The actor who played Henry did like a fantastic job. Like, legitimately, like, it's a very physical role, and he just did a great job. I was super impressed the whole time. Like, my dad described it as like split levels of acting. The performers they chose for Hopper and Joyce, like, legitimately, like, spot on. Like, who they chose to be Joyce, like, she could have been like a young Winona Ryder. Like I said, the effects in this play are absolutely mind-blowing. They've won multiple Tonys specifically for their effects in this production, and like, once you go see it, you can like definitely understand why. I'll talk about some more of these specific effects later in this video in the spoilers part, which we're almost to, don't worry. There are some things that they did on stage that like, I genuinely like, I have no idea how the fuck they did that. I swear some of these effects like break the laws of physics. I don't, no fucking clue. Like, literally no fucking clue. I think that overall, this play does the franchise justice. I would say that it's a 10 out of 10. It's almost like a play that you have to see more than once. I did not see it more than once, but I would love to see it more than once. And I hope that in the very least, there will be a taping of the play that is uploaded to Netflix after it's run at the Phoenix Theater and the Marquee Theater, just so people can experience it. I mean, it's not the same as going to see it in person, obviously. Like, nothing can really describe the magic that was seeing it in person, but I really hope that some sort of like taping of it gets uploaded on Netflix like they did for Hamilton. And I don't care about Hamilton, but that's my only point of reference for this. Or that they like release the script for the play after it's done. This play is very good. Like, I'd love to see it adapted into like I'd even love to see like a TV or like movie adaptation of this play. Okay, I think that's everything for this section. So we can go and move on to part two. Part two, more details and plot summary. I'm going to start out this part by giving more detailed trigger warnings in case you don't want to be spoiled, but like you heard some of the trigger warnings I gave out before and you just want to know more, which is totally fine. Like, I understand that completely, so I'm just gonna get that out of the way real quick. So some of the specific things that could happen, like that happened during this play, that could be very triggering. The first one is that a cat, obviously a stage cat, does get like pretty graphically like vecna'd on stage. I'm a big cat person. Like, cats have been like, they're my first special interest. I have two cats. I love cats so much that the only shot of Stranger Things I have not seen is Muse, because I will look away, and like I think I caught like a glimpse of it once and it was just not good. Violence against cats is a big thing for me. I do not like it. But in this play you can obviously tell it's a stage cat, and you can tell that it's not real, but the animatronic was really good. But yeah, you can tell that it's not real. So if that's something that you don't do well with, even if you can like tell that it's fake, then like you might want to look away when this is happening. Obviously, like you'll get the cue as to when it's happening, so you'll know when to look away. At another point in the play, like a rat explodes, and then there are like many mentions of like animals being like brutally killed and mutilated and that kind of stuff. In terms of child abuse, there are many times where children/teens are abused by their parents. One person gets slapped by their parent on stage, and one character shows up with a black eye that was given to them by a parent. In terms of graphics, like graphic gore and that kind of stuff, supernatural murders similar to what's shown in season 4 happen. There is a scene where a character is shown to be being beaten to death with an axe. It's kind of hard to put a trigger warning on like any depictions of like specific mental illnesses, because they aren't really mental illnesses at all, because it's more supernatural. But I would say most of the mental illnesses are like similar mental illnesses to what is depicted in the play, is like schizophrenia. There are plenty of moments that are very similar to what people describe psychosis as. There were many moments I found that were very similar to like very extreme panic or tic attacks. Just know yourself before you see this play, know what triggers you, so you can have the best experience possible. The next part of this section, I'm going to be going over a more detailed plot summary, and by this I mean a synopsis of the whole play. I will say that this is not going to be in exact order as it is revealed in the play. And then also, on a side note, like I was talking about before earlier, I think that the New York version is slightly different than the one shown in London, because there were many points where I had to cross-check my facts with what was written on the Stranger Things wiki, just to like clarify some things that I saw, or to like remember specific parts. And there were some things on the wiki that just did not match with what I saw, or even tells like certain events like in a slightly different order. So I don't know if the New York and London versions are like slightly different in that way, or if the wiki just hasn't been worked on that much or doesn't have the most accurate information. I'm not sure, but I just wanted to get that out of the way. The prologue happens in 1943 based on the folklore of the Philadelphia experiment. So basically, it was this experiment that like the US government, military, like what have you, they theorized that using like enough like magnetic power and energy could like make a whole ship like go invisible and disappear. The play starts out with these officers on the ship getting ready to perform this experiment. When the power is activated, the ship goes dark, and all of a sudden they're transported to this barren wasteland, and the crew is subsequently killed by demogorgons, and it's this very like intense scene. It's kind of shrouded in mystery, like nobody really knows what happened. The ship never came back, and most of the crew were killed by demogorgons when it gets transported here or whatever. That's when Act 1 starts. They say Episode 1, mainly Act 1. It's called The Girl from Nowhere. It jumps forward to 1959, so basically in season 4 when Henry moves in to Hawkins. The Creels move to Hawkins after an incident involving Henry at his old school in Nevada. After being bullied, Henry supernaturally popped a kid's eyes with his powers. He's just a very troubled kid from what we can see. Virginia, Henry's mom, keeps reminding Henry when he's experiencing these nightmares to remind himself that he is normal and that it is not real. Does this sound familiar? He's also carrying around a little radio, and like we see in the show, he uses this radio to hear what people are saying, behind closed doors, similar to Eleven's powers. At Henry's first day of school, he is introduced to the chaos of Hawkins High. He meets James Hopper Jr., which I did not know that Hopper was a junior. Joyce, Lonnie, Bob Newby, Patty, Bob's sister, adopted sister, and a bunch of other cast from the show. Some highlights of the cast that I'm not really going to talk about all that much, but I wanted to mention is Lucas's mom, Sue, who was the student president, and honestly, she is such a go, and I fucking love her. I loved her character. And Lucas's dad, I think his name was Charles, they were high school sweethearts, and legitimately, I would kill for that. I loved them so much. We also meet Dustin's dad, which is crazy, who was the heir to I think it's Henderson Alcohols or something, some sort of alcohol company, and he's an absolute asshole. And he made out with his cousin. This is the big overarching incest joke where it comes from. And yeah, I just don't okay. It was interesting to see Dustin's dad because, did not know he existed. I mean, of course he existed, but, I didn't know who he was. We also get more backstory on Dustin's mom, who I can only describe as, the horse girl of Hawkins High, and I love her for that. In the play, she brings her cat to school. Karen, Mike and Holly and Nancy's mom is just the slut queen that she is. And then we actually see Ted Wheeler, too. And apparently he used to have a personality. He was just a dumb jock. He was portrayed constantly making out with Karen. He would just go Tigers! It was a Pavlovian, response. Anyway, back to the play. So Henry meets Patty, Bob's sister, and they bond over nerdy stuff. Henry has that radio, like I mentioned, that he got from doing one of those, Christmas story type puzzles. I don't know if you've seen A Christmas Story. Henry's just a major nerd, and Henry and Patty just get along, and they already have this kind of romantic tension. Mainly they bond over feeling the black sheep of their families, and Patty talks about wanting to find her birth mother because she's adopted. Meanwhile, Joyce decides that as her senior project she wants to put on a play. All the Hawkins High's characters so far just join in on the production. Henry and Patty end up being cast as the lead characters who are in love, and they end up kissing. Henry is still plagued by visions and nightmares, and Virginia, once she learns about Henry's involvement with Patty, is worried that Henry is going to hurt or kill her. Victor, Henry's dad, is just a drunk. Is the only way I can describe him. Henry confides in Patty that he has powers, and Patty is these aren't evil. I don't know why you're saying that these are a bad thing. Henry creates a vision for Patty, and eventually he creates a vision of Patty's birth mother when they're talking about it. After a little bit, Henry goes into the attic by himself, and he is just being haunted by shadows is the only way I can describe it. Henry goes into the void. In the void, he finds Claudia, Dustin's mom's cat, and kills it using the Vecna method. And he's acting really, really odd. I mean, he's always acting odd in the play, but he's acting very creepy and just weird before he kills the cat. So obviously, Claudia discovers her cat and is absolutely terrified, and she offers a $100 reward, which is equivalent to a little over $1,000 in today's money, to anyone who can solve the murder of her cat. So Hopper, wanting to get out of Hawkins, decides to take Claudia up on this and starts an investigation with Bob, and eventually Joyce tags along. Their search only escalates as more and more pets are killed, like every night basically. So when Victor, Henry's dad, catches wind that Henry is hanging out with Patty, he goes to warn Mr. Newby, Bob and Patty's father, who is also the principal of Hawkins High. So Victor drunkenly shows up at a PTA meeting while Patty and Henry are at the Creel house trying to find the birth mom of Patty. So Victor comes up to Mr. Newby and is drunk and is like, your daughter is over at my house or something. So they go and they find Patty and Henry in the attic. Henry loses control in the vision and almost kills Patty's father, but Patty is like, no, Henry, you're good and I love you, which is able to like snap Henry out of that trance, or like at least gain some control back. But Mr. Newby is still blinded and very badly hurt, and at this point it becomes like very clear that Henry is possessed by something that is causing him to act this violently. Earlier in the play, he refers to himself as like us or something. When I was seeing this play, I didn't know if it was just like extreme like schizophrenia, mental illness, or if there was something paranormal like going on. After this, I was just like, okay, he is possessed by something. So Bob, Joyce, and Hopper are out investigating the animal murders while this is going on, and they realize that there is a link between like energy and static fluctuations and the times where animals are killed, and they trace the source of these like energy fluctuations back to the Creel's house. So Joyce and Hopper and Bob come to the conclusion that Victor is the madman killing all these animals. Mr. Newby is sent to the hospital, but is kept under like very secretive like quarantine conditions. At this time, Henry is sent to Dr. Brenner, aka Dr. Brenner is brought in by Victoria. No, that's that's Henry's dad. If he was trans femme, sorry, Virginia. These names, I can't. Okay. Basically, Patty at the hospital is able to like sneak in and see her father. He tells Patty that he is consumed by like a darkness, like a shadow, and that now it is like all that he sees. It reminds me of how Will describes the feeling he gets when he looks at the Mind Flayer in season 2, and like most Vecna victims describe like seeing this like evil as soon as they are blinded. That is the end of Act 1. Act 2 is called Captain Midnight, and when it starts we see like a montage of different documents around like Henry's like medical history and just kind of like childhood in general. There's like a bunch of information revealed here, so I'm just going to like, I tried to recount what I remembered like the best I could, but I might have missed some details. For stuff that I needed more clarification about, I checked the wiki, so I'm very sorry if this is like not accurate, but this is just the best that I could remember. So the one survivor of Project Philadelphia that we talked about all the way back in the prologue was Dr. Brenner's father. He is the only one who survived this occurrence. Dr. Brenner, it becomes like endlessly fascinated with what happened to his father, so he keeps trying to recreate the experiment, and this happens in Nevada, nearby where the Creels lived at the time. Apparently, technology was stolen sometime during this experiment, and it's implied that Henry happens upon this technology while he's exploring a cave when he's around like 8 years old. He went missing for 12 hours before being found with severe head trauma and an injury to his hand, as well as a unique blood type. Henry claims that he cannot remember anything from his disappearance, and we can assume that he was exposed to the Mind Flayer's presence. His personality changes drastically after this. Back in the lab in present time where Henry is with Brenner reveals a machine, and like this is kind of hard to explain, that can like show like the brain waves inside someone's head or like something. And so Brenner wheels out his father and puts the like sort of like brain device on his dad's head, and we can see on the monitors that Brenner's father's mind is like overtaken by like static. Like the only thing I can really compare it to is in season 2 when Joyce is looking back at the footage that Will took during Halloween, and she pauses it and is able to see like this like static outline. That's like the only way I can really describe how it looked. Basically, it just kind of revealed that like Dr. Brenner's father had really been like overtaken with like this sort of like static thing. When they hook up Henry to the machine, we see the same thing. Henry like freaks out because he doesn't want to interact with like the shadowy static presence that they find in his mind. But then Brenner's father starts speaking to Henry in like this demented voice. Presumably like the voice of like the entity or the static or whatever you want to call it. I'm gonna switch between calling it like the shadowy entity, static figure, the mind flayer. I'll just kind of mean the same thing. This voice encourages Henry to let it into his mind, and to stop resisting. And the moment is very, like, really extremely tense. And due to, like, a mixture of Brenner's manipulation and the stress and, like, literally everything, like, Henry agrees by reaching his hand out. And when he touches Brenner's father, it's, like, basically implied that the presence of the entity in, like, Henry grows stronger. I think that Brenner's father dies shortly after this, but again, I couldn't really find anything about that like on the wiki. Brenner also starts performing like experiments on Henry, mainly trying to get him to like open a portal to the Upside Down, where like he almost succeeds. Like there's a Demogorgon we can see through a pretty cool portal, and like the Demogorgon effects are just amazing. It's really good. Later, Brenner explains that killing is what makes Henry's powers stronger, and tells him how he knows that he, aka the possessed part of him, enjoys the act of killing. And so this kind of explains to me why Henry is shown like acting like really weird before and during like a killing, I guess. Brenner tries to get Henry to kill an inmate, and during this time it's revealed that just basically upsetting someone with these powers will cause them to act up or have them be more extreme or that kind of thing. So there are a lot of times in this play in which Henry is like very like forcibly subjected to uncomfortable situations and environments, just so his powers can be stronger, or so he can like exhibit them, like basically lose control. Henry freaks out and like does not want to kill this inmate, but he ends up like killing some guards, and Brenner has to assume that like Henry is in his words connected to someone, and that is why he will not kill. Henry then goes back home because at this point he is not being held at H&L. He's here by his own will. When he goes back home, he realizes that his mom is just going to send him back to Brenner. There's a point in the play too where I remember that Virginia is talking with Brenner, and Brenner is like, well, we can just take him from you, like, against his will, that kind of thing. Virginia's like, do you promise that we'll never see him again or something? So very much like Virginia does not want Henry in the family anymore. He's a burden to her, and she just wants to get rid of him. Henry obviously does not want to go back to Brenner. Now that he's more unstable, this is when he kills his mother and sister and tries to kill his father, but falls unconscious. Meanwhile, Joyce's play is going on, and because Henry is not present for the play, Bob is chosen to play Henry's role, so like adding on to the like weird incest jokes because Patty is still playing the love interest of the main character. There's this whole side plot, it's very funny, where Hopper, who eventually ends up joining the play, is tasked with like taking Victor from the audience and interrogating him about the animal killings. And of course the person who Hopper takes is not Victor, but a professor from a university that is offering like a scholarship to like kids. Hopper goes through like this crazy thing where he like blinds the professor, like puts a bag over his head and like acts out this whole scene between him and his dad, and like it's just crazy. And then it's It's just wild. Of course, the professor thinks it's all part of the play and is like, whoa, I'm really impressed. Even though at this point, it's like, the professor said something about like the scholarship like not even being real in the first place. Because of the sheer energy and power that is released by Henry's killings, the power goes out around town and Joyce freaks out and tries to keep the audience entertained while the power is out. Back at the Creoles, Henry wakes up and decides to walk to Hawkins High, and he meets Joyce in the breaker room, and he is acting like very strangely, like freaks me the fuck out the way that he was acting. Joyce tries to comfort Henry, telling him how she knows that Victor is the killer and that they're going to arrest him, but Henry just like starts laughing, like evil laughs, and like it's like, oh, you're so stupid or something like that, and like it's just a very uncomfortable scene. But luckily Joyce is not hurt. Henry eventually finds his way to Patty on the rafters and tries to warn her about Brenner coming for her. Henry tells Patty where she can find her birth mom and says that like, you need to leave right now. And Patty's a little frightened, obviously, but she wants to try and comfort and help out Henry. But then, Brenner finds the two of them and tries to purposefully aggravate Henry and try to get him to kill Patty. And Patty still tries to comfort Henry during this, and while Henry is like trying to fight for control over his powers, he breaks the rafters, causing Patty to fall down. There's this like really cool sequence where like while Patty is falling down, she falls like in slow motion, and like legitimately like I have no idea how the fuck they pulled that off, because like it looked like slow-mo. I genuinely don't know how they did that. It was really fucking cool. So then Patty goes to the hospital, Henry is taken back to H&L, and Victor is convicted of the animal killings and the murders. Then we have an epilogue. It's kind of a long, like, rushed sequence, just showing, like, the near aftermath of the characters. Joyce ends up staying in Hawkins, as we know, despite her talking with Hopper throughout the play about moving to Mexico. Hopper, under the pressure of his father, decides to not only become part of the Hawkins police, but joins the army. Henry, still in the lab, goes to the void and sees that Patty survived. I'm going to talk more about this later. Yeah, he sees that she survived, but that she needs like a cane to walk now, and found her birth mother. Henry's also informed that 10 children survived the blood transfusion experiment. Also more about this later. And Henry is invited to meet the kids. There is where he meets Elle, and he takes her hand, and while he's walking out with her, like a shadow showing like Elle and like not Henry but Vecna is like flashbanged to the whole audience. Like it's crazy. It, like startled me. I was like, whoa. And that's the end of the fucking show, and they expect you to go on with your life after that, and it's like, whoa. Like it was just crazy ending. So now that we've talked about the whole show, I want to talk about some of my favorite things about the show, like effects and stuff. So the floating and the telekinesis effects were like so good, and like I mentioned before, and it's kind of like hard to explain, and I keep saying it even though it's probably not helpful, but like I genuinely don't know how they achieved some of the effects that they did. Like at one point, a huge mind flayer basically like frames the stage like out of nowhere, and it's so fucking cool. Like I said before, it's very immersive. There were like multiple times where like actors went out into the seating area, and like extras that are acting as like investigators with H&L or like army people like are out in the audience, and there's a part where they even like somewhat interact with the audience. The story was really good. It added a lot of background to Henry, and it's really caused me to like reframe a lot of how I think about him and other characters. This is just a miscellaneous section of tidbits about like characters and plot points that I did not mention. The Denny's Diner of Hawkins that all the theater kids go to is Melvald's, which is funny because that's the name of the general store in Hawkins. So I'm like, was Melvald's like originally a diner? No clue. It's also possible that I'm remembering things wrong, but like I'm 99% sure that the diner was called Melvald's. And what's funny is that's where Joyce ends up working after high school. So hello, it is me editing this video,
And I just wanted to say that I forgot that there's like a point in the play where Joyce is like shown to be reading like the Communist Manifesto. So like she's my woke queen. She's a wokey.
Dustin's father is an absolute asshole. Like I mentioned, there's the alcohol distillery part, and just basically like what I'm wondering is like, since we never see Dustin's father in the series, like I don't know if he's alive or dead, I wonder if Dustin and his mother like benefit from this like company at all. Another thing in the play is that they revealed that Bob has like always had a crush on Joyce, but in the play there are multiple times that like Joyce actively rejects Bob's advances with like no thank you. It's very funny, but it's interesting to see how Bob is like flirting with Joyce in this play, but she is very like, no, I'm good. During the events of the play, it's implied that Lonnie cheats on Joyce and even requests a song to be played on Bob's radio show. He has a radio show. I mean, like, it should kind of be expected because he's the founder of the AV Club. He requests a song dedicated to Joyce, and he states that it was just a joke. It's clear that, like, Joyce and Lonnie's relationship has, like, pretty much always been rocky, and that there was no, like, real, like, good period. Henry at a point reveals to Patty while he's like erratic and possessed that Mr. Newby is actually her real father and that she is not necessarily adopted. It turns out that her father, who again is the principal of Hawkins High, had an affair with a student and effectively stole the baby from her. That's what I was talking about with the pedophilia. And so like that's cool, I guess, but it's unclear who Bob's mom is and if he was married, like Mr. Newby was married during this time, but whatever it is, he had an affair with the student, which I think is fucking crazy. Whenever Henry has a vision where the voice of the Mind Flayer speaks to him, the person that the Mind Flayer is speaking through rips out like chunks of their hair during the vision, and I don't really know if this is like a method to like further signify to the audience that what we are seeing is a vision / like not reality, or if there's like some significance to this. And when Henry has episodes in which he is like fighting off the presence of the Mind Flayer, becomes possessed, he like often foams at the mouth. Like I said before, Hopper's main reason for investigating the pet murders is not just because he wants the $100, but because he wants to use the money to get out of Hawkins. Hopper and Joyce even have like a heartfelt confession about running away together to Mexico. Hopper's father mentions that he wants to send Hopper off to the military, and by the end of the play we see Hopper basically give in to this want of his father. If you want to read more about Hopper's story from there, I would suggest reading the spin-off novel about Hopper's time in the NYPD after he comes back from Vietnam, but before he moves back to Hawkins, called Darkness on the Edge of Town, just in case you wanted to know more. Also, adding on to this, Hopper's father is the chief of police in Hawkins. During the play, Hopper steals his father's cigarettes a few times and steals them at school. He gets in trouble for this and is abused by his father, even getting a black eye at a point. So, now that we're done with that, we can move on to part 3. Well, holy shit. I'm going to be going over my thoughts and analysis on this, and I'm going to start with an interpretation on some of the murkier parts of the play / stuff I couldn't really find an explanation to, like that sort of thing. I'm going to assume that the static shadow evil thing that possessed Brenner's father as well as Henry is what we know to be the Mind Flayer, and this is really only supported by the fact that when Mr. Newby is asked to draw like the evil shadow presence that he can't stop seeing, he draws the Mind Flayer. Also, a large Mind Flayer prop, like I said, looms over the stage at a point. But the interesting thing about this is that it means that when Henry gets banished to Dimension X by L in season 4, this isn't the first time that Henry has met the Mind Flayer. Another thing that I'm left thinking about after this play is what exactly happened to Henry in the time that he was missing. When I was cross-checking my plot summary from the Stranger Things wiki page on the first shadow, I found absolutely like no mention of the head / hand injury that Henry returns with, like after going missing, which I thought was really weird because in the play they literally showed like an x-ray of Henry's hand after he came back from this disappearance, and he has like a hole, like a black circle in the middle of his hand, like in the x-ray, so it's like he has like no bone there or something, and it's like, are we gonna talk about this? Like, what the fuck was that? Like, I'm so concerned. What happened? Like, what the fuck do you mean? During the scene that Henry and Brenner are discussing this, like, Henry, like, obviously has, like, a nosebleed and such, but, like, it's also implied that, like, at least from what I saw, he, like, somewhat bled from his hand, and I'm like, literally, like, what the fuck is this about? Like, I'm so concerned. Like, he just has, like, a hole in his hand. I don't understand. Another big discrepancy between the wiki and what I had seen in the plays between Brenner's father, the way that the wiki writes about Brenner's father is that, like, it implies that he dies and that we don't ever see Brenner's father on stage, but, like, I did. It was just a weird thing that I didn't see them mention. And, like, again, I have to assume that this is either because, like, it wasn't well researched, or they didn't get, like, a good summary of the play, or the first shadow in New York is slightly different than the version in London. A thing that I took away from the play was the fact that the powers that we see characters possess in the show aren't, like, naturally occurring in the universe of Stranger Things. What I saw in the play is that in order to possess some sort of supernatural power, you have to either, like, become infected by the Mind Flayer or have the same blood type that Henry and his father has. His father also came back with a unique blood type, which is interesting because it implies that, like, you can't effectively 100% like separate the powers with the source itself. However, like, you don't need to be possessed to have these powers. It's unclear if even being possessed gives you these powers in the first place. There was no mention, from what I remember, of Dr. Brenner's father having any sort of power, just that he was, like, infected and had this new blood type. Though this could also be because of how, like, badly injured Brenner's father was when he came back from the Philadelphia experiment, that he just was not, like, physically able to perform these powers. Like, I know in the show sometimes characters can perform these powers without doing, like, anything physical, but it's also implied that, like, the use of, like, hands or that kind of, like helps channel the energy, but, like, I don't know. Oh boy. Thoughts about Henry. This is going to be a really lengthy section because this play reveals a lot about Henry and his backstory. I think it's at least somewhat known that I don't like Henry, especially before this play, and that, like, I thought he was just, like, a groomer and was, like, just evil to be pure evil. And this play made me revisit a lot of those thoughts specifically. I'm going to try to explore this from, like, all perspectives, though. And I'm going to preface this section again with saying that I still think it's crazy that people defended Henry and Henry's actions before this play came out, because obviously now we know that Henry is, like, somewhat not in control of himself or his actions anymore, but, like, we didn't learn anything about this or see any definitive evidence pointing to this in season 4. When you think about, like, all the fan interpretation of his character, it's, like, really interesting to see how off we were when it came to the real story, whether you liked him or not. Also because we have absolutely no idea how Henry acted before he disappeared. We just don't know what he would have been like if he never went missing in the first place. However, I still think that Henry somewhat chose to be evil, and before you're gonna, like, throw tomatoes at me and screaming, but, like, he was possessed, I want you to hear my argument in full. I'm not trying to sit down here and be like, oh, Henry is still pure evil, because, like, I feel like my thoughts are a lot more nuanced than that. Honestly, like, I do feel a lot of sympathy for Henry after seeing this play. I can't speak on, like, what Henry's home life was before he disappeared, but his home life as depicted in the play seems like absolute hell, and, like, it kind of honestly, it kind of reminds me of, like, of those, like, Autism Speaks commercials that are like, I am autism and I will ruin your marriage, like, that kind of thing. I'm sure that, like, having a child that acted like how Henry did after being taken is like exhausting, but like still Henry's parents treated him like shit, like especially his mother. In the play it's mentioned like multiple times that like Virginia took Henry to go see some sort of like unconventional doctors throughout the years, even mentioning once that like she performed an exorcism on him or tried to perform an exorcism on him. Henry is somewhat scared of his mom after this, and she like excuses her behavior by saying like, I'm doing this for your own good and I just want my child back. But it's not like this is like a Will Byers season 2 sort of situation. It's very clear that like Henry is still in there and that the treatments are like only making him worse in a way. There's a point in the play where like Virginia like slaps Henry like after an outburst, so it's not like the same like I just want my boy back like how Joyce was trying to get Will to be unpossessed in like season 2. It's like this weird sort of like medical like child like this weird abuse dynamic. Adding on to Henry's home life, it can't help that Victor is just like an absolute alcoholic due to his experiences in the war. There's not really a lot said about Alice, which was Henry's sister, but I do think it's safe to say that like overall his home life is not a healthy one. Obviously Virginia just admitting that like she wants Henry like gone, that can't feel good to a child. It's not really like a surprise to me that Henry turned evil. I can't really blame him. Like, that's just a very, like, fucking shitty situation to be in. But what makes me think that, like, he turned evil, like, in that regards, though, is, like, the fact that, like, in the play, we are shown many times that, like, Henry has the capacity for good. And this isn't to just say that, like, oh, he could stop being possessed by the Mind Flayer when he wants to, like, he could control it. He was, like, shown being able to fight off its presence, even after the encounter with Brenner's father, though like he may not be strong enough to do it like himself. He can still fight off the Mind Flayer. Whether or not he does so successfully when it's like just him is like another thing, but like he is shown to like be able to try and actively resist this. We see this during the confrontation with like Brenner and Patty. With Patty's encouragement, Henry tries to fight off the influence of the Mind Flayer. This is essentially why I think that he just gave up trying to be good and trying to fight off the Mind Flayer. And again, like I'm not sure that I can blame him really, like after everything that he's gone through. Still, like I feel like it was a choice. Like granted, obviously it was the easier choice out of the two. It's a lot easier to just like give up fighting and let that evil take over you rather than actively try and resist it, but it was still a choice. But like there's a whole nother layer to this too. It's hard to explain whether or not Henry like gave up his whole body to the Mind Flayer, or if there's like some sort of like some part of Henry that still exists in his body and is able to control himself. The implications of whether or not Henry is able to control his body is like heartbreaking either way, because either like after presumably losing / killing the only person who loved him, since like for a while it's implied that Henry did not know that like Patty survived the encounter, he decided to give up and let his consciousness finally be like released in a sort of death, knowing that like the evil that he was unleashing through the like to the world through letting the Mind Flayer have like total possession of his body. Or Henry just gave up after the incident with Patty, like leaning into the powers and the will of the Mind Flayer, because like what else did he have left? Maybe through these powers he could like finally get back at like Brenner and the people who hurt him. So personally and sadly, I think it's more of the latter than the former, mainly because of what we see in the epilogue, because Henry like years after still thinks of Patty and traveled into the void like just to see if she survived. And I feel like if there was no semblance of Henry in his body and he basically gave up his body to the Mind Flayer, like why would he go through the process of like going into the void to try and find Patty? Either way, I'm really impressed with Henry's writing, and like I have like a new appreciation for his character after seeing the play. It gives Henry like so much more depth than like season 4 did, and like it's really interesting to see like the events of his life through an unbiased outsider's perspective, because everything that we know from like Henry's backstory was told to us by Henry. So it was just interesting seeing an objective point of view of what happened. Next part is my theories and additional questions after seeing this show. Just an additional note, after talking about Henry in the previous section, I'm going to continue referring to him as Henry. Whether or not you think that he was in full control of his body or he wasn't, like, that's up to you, up to your interpretation. So a big theory that's been like floating around / like something that like we never really knew about in the show was whether or not Dimension X is the Upside Down. It's just been a big topic of discussion, but like after watching this play, I am 100% convinced that Dimension X and the Upside Down are the same place, just at like two different periods of times, and this is just all due to the prologue of the play of what we see in the Philadelphia experiment. When the play disappears in the Philadelphia experiment, like it's implied that this is the first time that humanity has traveled to the Upside Down. The thing is though that like the landscape looks extremely similar to Dimension X compared to the Upside Down. The monsters shown are like also undeniably demogorgons. Like if the Upside Down is a separate dimension created after Dimension X was, that like the demogorgon like species creatures would have had to like migrate to the Upside Down. When Henry is pushed into opening the portals to this other dimension, it also looks like what we know to be Dimension X. However, when Elle is put through the same process in season 1, the portals that she creates are to like the Upside Down. She creates a portal to the Upside Down in season 1, and in season 4 she creates a portal to Dimension X. However, it's basically confirmed that Elle's powers come from Henry himself. Why would Elle be opening up like a portal to like a different dimension than like what Henry opens up, you know? Especially when Elle doesn't really know shit about like Dimension X or the Upside Down. It's not like she's like purposefully trying to like open a portal to the Upside Down or purposely trying to open a portal to Dimension X. No, this is just what's happening in reaction to her powers, especially when the tagline of the play is like before the world turned upside down. Like it's just very much implied that what we are seeing with the Philadelphia experiment is the Upside Down. Of course, like the main argument against this would be like, well, like what about Vecna's mind palace, huh? That looks very much like Dimension X, and the Upside Down existed. Well, Vecna's mind palace did. My answer to this is like yes and no. Also, sorry for using the word mind palace. I just love using the word mind palace because like that's exactly what it is, right? Like that is his mind palace. We all have mind palaces, okay? Vecna's mind palace could very much just be like a vision or like a place in the void, which is what I think it is. I think it's just a place in the void, especially since Henry in the Upside Down resides at the Creel house in the Upside Down, like not his mind palace. His physical body is in the Creel house in the Upside Down. If we are operating under the assumption that like Dimension X and the Upside Down are like the same dimension, like I think it's safe to assume that like Henry had some like hand in like shaping the dimension, like Dimension X into what it became, like the Upside Down, or it's like Dimension X just maybe like an incredibly remote section of the Upside Down. However, I don't really think that. I think Henry just kind of had some hand in forming it. This also raises an interesting question where it's like, why did Henry decide to turn Dimension X into a parallel dimension of the real world? Well, actually, I have two explanations. The first one is that Henry didn't intentionally turn Dimension X into the Upside Down. It was just a manifestation of Henry's like trauma and thoughts, etc., etc., or that Henry turned Dimension X into the Upside Down to add like an extra layer to like torment the victims that he pulls into this dimension, like kind of like the back rooms, I guess. What we know is that the Mind Flayer's main purpose is just like to kill and cause harm and like torture these people. Like it feeds off of fear. Of course it would change to some like uncanny version of like the place that you know to be safe, the place that you know to be home. Like just imagine like what happened to Will. Like you're chased by like a faceless creature like 6 to 10 feet tall, and like you're lucky enough to escape, but like once you escape you're just like at like a terrifying version of your house where like you're supposed to feel safe but you're just not. The next like theory / question that I have is really interesting, and it's that You do not need powers to visit the void necessarily. I think this might be one of the most interesting things that is revealed in the play. When Henry initially reveals his powers to Patty, he starts by giving her visions and taking her to find her biological mother. The fact that someone without powers is able to enter the void is really not a surprise to most people who know a lot about the show, especially because of what we see in season 4, like especially with Nancy, where Vecna basically reveals his like plans to her. However, like I had the impression, and it was just me, that like people were not going into the void per se, but that they were like seeing a memory that they had or a memory from Henry himself, mainly because the visions that the Vecna victims were seeing were not of like real things happening. But when Elle is shown to go into the void, she is seeing things that are really happening or representative of things that are like actually happening, whereas like some of the visions that Henry will give his victims are like entirely fictitious. After seeing this play, it's implied that like when you travel to the void, it's possible to take another person with you. The reason why I wrote this entire section is that later in the play, after Henry is taken into Brenner's care and like seemingly disappears, Patty puts on a blindfold and tries to find Henry through the void, and it works. Like she's even able to communicate with him, and this is something that like we've never seen before in the series. I just had to sit back and just be like, what the fuck? Like, did that really work? Like, the main question is whether someone without these powers has to be taken into the void by someone with the powers before they are able to travel into the void by themselves, if that makes sense. Could Patty have traveled to the void before Henry gave her those visions, or did Henry need to give her those visions before she was able to like tap in and go into the void? It like raises some interesting questions, because like that means technically a lot of the characters in Stranger Things are now like eligible to travel into the void on their own. Unrelated to this theory slash question, like I hope this happens in season 5, just seeing a similar moment where like Will might be lost and Mike desperately tries to search for him and like resorts to going to the void, or like vice versa. Like I would eat that shit right up. Are you kidding me? Like that is just delicious. Next question theory thing is the blood transfusions. This section's gonna be kind of short though, because this is more of a question than a theory. It's implied that H&L, to create the children with powers, was advertising experiments specifically towards pregnant women, and this might be reading too far into this, and it is probably reading way too far into this, and is probably just the autism taking over, but this implies somewhat that Elle was like kind of an accident. This is all based around the book like Suspicious Minds / what is revealed about Terry Ives in the first season of Stranger Things. In the book Suspicious Minds, it talks about Terry and her involvement with H&L and how Brenner ended up taking Elle from her. In the book, Terry volunteers for H&L not because she is pregnant, but because she needs the money. The lab is willing to pay for test subjects. Again, she does not know that she is pregnant. She does not realize that she is pregnant until like about like halfway through her time at the lab. It's important to just acknowledge that Suspicious Minds is secondary canon. If there's a discrepancy between what happens in the book and what is in the play, I'm more inclined to believe what happens in the play is more canon, because the Duffer Brothers helped write the play, whereas Suspicious Mind was a spin-off prequel book that was written by like an outsourced author who may have just been given like bullet points to like go off of, and like maybe the Duffer Brothers like just skimmed through it and was like, this is good, or like who really knows how much involvement they had. And that's not like a dig at Suspicious Minds. I really enjoyed reading the book, and it might have just been something that like writers overlooked, especially again because we don't really know like how much involvement that the Duffers had with Suspicious Minds. Based on what we know about Terry, like not just from the book but like also the series, like I mentioned, I find it hard to believe that Terry would have like participated in an experiment that would put her child in danger, especially considering like it is the child of her boyfriend who got drafted and died in war. This leaves a couple possibilities as to what happened specifically with the blood transfusions / with Terry / H&L. I believe any of these four things are a possibility, considering like how scummy H&L is and how much they're able to get away with. Number one, for some reason, Terry did voluntarily sign up for the experiment on pregnant women. Of course, that would mean that Suspicious Mind shouldn't be taken as a canonical entry into the Stranger Things universe. I say that all of them are plausible. I don't really believe that this one is all that plausible. However, these next three I do think are plausible, or are more plausible than number one. Two, after finding out about Terry's pregnancy, H&L grandfathered her into an experiment that they were conducting with pregnant women. Considering the fact that Terry was like already under the influence of like LSD and a lot of other drugs while she was at the lab, like I don't really think it's out of the realm of possibility, where maybe she like didn't even know that these experiments were going on just because she was like on so much drugs. Number three, and I think this one goes without saying and applies to all of the above, H&L did not do their experiments super ethically, surprise, but like more than like I thought. I find it really hard that any expecting mother would willingly go through an experiment that would put their growing baby like in harm's way during pregnancy. I just wouldn't be surprised if H&L tracked down potentially vulnerable pregnant women and like conducted this experiment on them, but like put out, we're looking for pregnant women, so they have an alibi or like an excuse, or like, you know what I mean. And then my fourth explanation is a mixture of 2 and 3, which is probably what happened. My next theory / question, and I know I have a lot of them, this one is just more of a theory, and this is, Will Byers may receive powers in season 5, and this is really not a new theory, and it's really like one that I have a lot of like mixed opinions on. It can be argued that like Will already has powers. It's not really a secret that like Will has like an undeniable like connection to the Upside Down, like a sixth sense sort of. I'm including this theory here because I think it's more of a possibility that Will might receive powers in like the more traditional sense of like what we've seen in the series, like telekinesis and that kind of thing. I'm going to talk about more of this in the next section. Personally, and like I'm very biased here, like I don't want Will to receive any more powers than he has already, because I feel like, and this is just me, giving him these powers, especially if they're permanent, would only like further remind himself of his time on the Upside Down. I feel like he has like enough trauma, and I feel like giving him these powers would only cause him more trauma. Like I think we can safely say that like these powers, though they're like cool on paper, they always are just causing like some sort of trauma. Like it's never good. I feel like if Eleven could have chosen to not have her powers, she would have. If Henry could have chosen to not disappear and like come back with these powers, then he would have, like that sort of thing, especially when in the series they're portrayed as like something that's like super hard to control. With how like accessible these like powers are shown to be in the play, I just can't help but like wonder if this is one of the ways in which the play will relate to like Stranger Things 5.
Hello, it's me editing this video. Still, it's actually July 4th. I gotta finish this shit up. In terms of like relating to Stranger Things 5, I'm not sure if Will getting powers is what's gonna relate to the play, but I do think like that the group of kids that Mike is saving from like the military bases in Hawkins are like, it's giving Henry going missing near a military base and then getting powers. Like, put the 2 and 2 together.
This is my second to last section, and this is what about Byler and also Will and Henry as foils. It might be a little bit of a controversial take, but like as of right now, I'm having issues deriving any possible information about Byler after seeing this play. Of course, like, okay, give me like 2 months and I might come up with something, but like as of right now, like I'm having a hard time. I don't really want to force a section of this video if like I think I don't really have anything super meaningful to say. This whole week it's been hard for me to like sit down and film this video because I've been having like car issues. While I was sitting down in a car shop, like I realized why I don't have like a lot to say at this point in time, which is because Henry and Patty, the main relationship in this play that fans will probably compare to Byler, or most likely compared to Byler, are like, they are a straight couple. And I know this is obviously like, oh duh, well of course they're straight. I feel like something that people don't talk about enough, or like we don't talk about enough anymore, I know a lot of people were talking about it a couple years ago, being queer is a big part of Byler. For me, unless it's really like obvious parallel, or like people like parallels like Jonathan and Nancy, who are are people that are very close to Will and Mike as well. It's kind of hard to like draw those kinds of parallels to Byler because I feel like being queer is such an integral part of their relationship, and because they are queer, they obviously are not as like outspoken or transparent about their feelings for each other, whereas Henry and Patty can be because they are a straight couple, and that's what the norm is in the 60s and the 80s and that kind of stuff. With Henry and Will as foils, we do see some more parallels, I guess you could say, between Henry and Will in this play, but I definitely think that you see more differences between Will and Henry as portrayed in the play than you see between Henry as portrayed in the show and Will. A lot of Will's main like characteristics that you can definitely see parallels of in the show are like being like quiet and sensitive, which like of course you can see that in the play, but like also specifically drawing. Henry doesn't really draw throughout this whole thing. They both seem to have an interest in AV and radio type stuff rather than the fact that they feel like outcasts and they're nerdy and stuff. It's kind of hard to like compare Henry and Will in this play in a sense where it's very tricky. I feel like it's a good thing kind of, because even though we think of Henry as this like foil to Will, which I definitely still think like he is still his own character outside of being a foil to Will. Yeah, that's just my thing. And like obviously like I can't really attest to like before like hello?
Oh, hi. Are you filming?
Yes.
Oh, I just didn't know if you wanted to do Greek tonight.
I would love to do Greek tonight. I've actually been recording for an hour and 45 minutes.
Oh.
So I hope people like this video because I changed my whole ass sheets to my bed to make sure that my bed looked like good and presentable for this.
What's behind you?
Which one?
Right there.
This?
Oh, is that the... What's his name?
This is a dart.
Yeah.
This was the one they were selling at the play that I had.
Oh, that's right.
Same people that made these ones.
Oh.
I kind of lost my train of thought, but it's okay. Anyway, yeah, that was my section about Henry and Will and Byler specifically. I really don't want to have to like force myself to write a section about Byler if I don't feel like it's necessary or like I just can't like come up with anything, but I felt like this was like an important addition to the video. And of course, like I still love Byler with all my heart. It's still my special interest. It's still they are my pookies, but I just had to say this. So that brings me to my last point regarding Stranger Things The First Shadow, which is my one criticism of the whole play, and my one criticism is accessibility. The fact of the matter is, the majority of the people who would like to see The First Shadow firsthand, like experiencing it, like going in person to see the show, may not be able to, like at least on like Broadway or in London. If you want to see The First Shadow as of right now, like you must travel to either New York City or London, both of which are like very expensive places to travel to. So that means like plane tickets, hotels or like Airbnbs, general travel expenses like food and transportation, and then the tickets to the play within itself aren't really cheap either, especially if you want like how I was saying, like a good experience and like the best view of the play. Sure, if the script is released, like in theory, like anyone can put on a production of The First Shadow, so that could make it more accessible to other people. But like, let's be honest, like not all of those productions will be like officially produced by Netflix or have the wide variety of resources available to Broadway or London shows. The biggest parts and best parts of this play, and like also a huge selling point, is like the effects that they are able to achieve. And smaller productions, even if they can put on the general story, will not be able to recreate that experience of seeing it live. All in all, like I just wish that like more people had access to this play and like the story and the magic of seeing it in person. I loved seeing the play so much, and like I wish I had more people to talk to who have like seen the play and like hear their opinions and their experience, but it's really expensive and not accessible for everybody to go and see. Even though the experience won't be quite as the same or like as magical, I hope that if anyone from Netflix sees this, that they upload like a tape of the play in some way, shape, or form to the streaming service so that more people can see it. The story, like the effects, the acting is like, it's too good to keep it like hidden away like that. Like I feel like this play was like so like spectacular and well written and just like such a good contribution to the canon that like it's like a disservice to Stranger Things the franchise and Stranger Things fans to like not make it more accessible in some way, shape, or form. So that's just my one criticism. Who knows whether or not the play will come out taped or through a script or anything, but I really hope that more people are able to experience this play. I don't know, maybe, I know it'd be hard, maybe they'll do some sort of like traveling production, at least throughout the US, where I may be wrong, but I feel like the majority of Stranger Things fans are. Well, I've been recording for almost 2 hours now, 2 hours straight of recording. I have no idea how long this video is going to be, but I just want to say thank you if you've made it all the way to the end of this video. Sorry it took me so long to write and record, especially from writing to recording. While I'm recording this, it is June 28th, and I was like, I'm gonna make this video as soon as I'm done seeing the play, and like, I saw the play on the 13th. Thank you for watching all of my thoughts, and like, just thank you for supporting this video and me, and I guess, like, I'm being sappy, but like, who cares? My voice is hurting so much because I never talk this much in real life. I make a lot of Stranger Things related content because it is my special interest. I'm very autistic about Stranger Things, especially Byler. So if you're very interested in Byler, you should also subscribe because I make a ton of Byler related videos, and I'm pretty sure one of my next videos that's going to come out at least before part 1 of Stranger Things 5 is going to be a very long recap and analysis of everything about Byler between like canon and fanon and all that kind of stuff. So if that's something that interests you, please subscribe. I have so many thoughts. If you want to see more content from me, I would say I'm probably most active on my Tumblr. If you want to talk with me and talk with other people who also love Stranger Things and Byler, I have a Discord server, which will be linked in the description. I also have a link tree, so you can like see all my other socials if you want to follow me there. I have a bunch of these playbills. It was just me and my mom, my dad, so 3 people, but like we came home with like 8 playbills just because we were all like very worried about my playbill coming back like damaged or anything. And of course I have like the gay version of the playbill because I went to go see it during June. I have all these playbills and I don't know what to do with them. My dad was like, you should sign them and give them away, and I'm like, yeah, because people would want a playbill signed by someone who was not in the fucking play, who's just like some random like gay ass dude like ranting online. If you have any ideas of what I should do with those playbills, like let me know. I've already used one of them to like make a collage in like my junk journal, but like I don't know, I just have a bunch of those and I don't know what to do with them. So like if you have an idea, then like let me know. I don't know, college is expensive, maybe I will sign them and I will give them away for a price. Just kidding, I'm not gonna do that. That's all for today. Again, thank you for watching this video, and I will see you in the next one. Alright, bye!